Epilepsy is recurrent seizures that happen chronically without a clear provoking cause, at least not acutely, like not a single identifiable cause of seizures, and all of the consequences that result from those recurrence of seizures. So clearly, to understand what the heck that means, like what the heck epilepsy is in that context, we have to first understand seizures and realize that not all seizures are indicative of or lead to the disease known as epilepsy. So while all people living with epilepsy experience seizures in one form or another, not all people with seizures or who have had seizures have epilepsy by definition.
Right.
So what is a seizure then? And again, the International League Against Epilepsy has a definition for us, and I quote, "A seizure is a transient occurrence of signs and or symptoms due to abnormal, excessive, or synchronous neuronal activity in the brain." Episode over. That was so clear, right?
I have so many questions already.
I do too, Erin. And while that definition might have been helpful for some people, I actually really struggle with that definition. So I'm going to try and really break this down in the way that my brain makes sense of it, which is on a very basic level. We all know, and I've talked about on this podcast before in other episodes where we've dealt with things like meningitis or other kind of brain-related injuries, that our brain communicates via both electrical and chemical signals. So in general, what happens in our brain is that chemical signals are converted into actual electrical impulses. And that is what is transmitting information to allow us to do literally everything, like blink, breathe, talk, wave, type, etc. And these electrical signals and the chemical signals as well have to be very tightly regulated, both in their circuits of where they go and how they go and the timing for us to be able to do all of the things. So what happens in a seizure is that we see a burst of these electrical impulses, an abnormal amount and or abnormal networks or pathways of activity. That is what we are seeing in a seizure, and that is what is picked up on an EEG when they're hooking up all those electrodes to look at the electrical activity in your brain, and they say this looks like a seizure. And this abnormal activity, it can start from just one part of the brain, which results in what we call a focal seizure, or what used to be called partial seizures. Or sometimes we can see this burst of electrical impulses from both sides, both hemispheres of our brain at the same time. And that results in what we call a generalized seizure. And because our brain is, suffice it to say, very complicated, it's a complex structure with a lot of different layers between which these electrical impulses have to travel. So these abnormal bursts of activity can happen in any given part of our brain, which means that those signs or symptoms that we might see or associate with a seizure can actually vary incredibly widely depending on where in the brain they're occurring.